October 5th, 1917. Dawn breaks over the scarred fields of the Western Front. A pale sun struggles to pierce the low-hanging mist, revealing the jagged trenches etched into the earth like scars of a living wound. The air is cold, carrying the faint tang of cordite and churned soil. Somewhere above, the droning hum of engines grows steadily, cutting through the silence. High over the lines, a solitary Fokker doctor in a triplane slices through clouds, its crimson fuselage a streak of defiance against the gray sky. Within, Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, grips the control stick with measured focus. The triple wings vibrate under the strain of the engine, responding to every subtle command. Below, distant flashes mark the rhythm of artillery, sending plumes of smoke spiraling skyward. Reconnaissance observers cling to their fragile aircraft, eyes straining to map the enemy lines. The first dogfight of the day is imminent. In this theater of steel and sky, skill and audacity decide life and death. Every climb, dive, and turn carries the weight of strategy and the certainty of danger. For Richthofen, the morning holds promise and peril alike, an encounter that will etch itself into the annals of aerial warfare. By 1917, the Western Front had settled into a brutal stalemate. Trenches carved across northern France and Belgium define the battlefield, stretching from the North Sea to the Swiss border. Both the Allies and the Central Powers had realized that control of the skies could tip the balance of this grinding conflict. Aircraft were no longer experimental curiosities. They were instruments of strategy, reconnaissance, and increasingly lethal precision. Germany's Luftstreitkräfte had grown into a structured, disciplined force, its squadrons, Jastas, designed for offensive patrols, escort missions, and intercepting enemy reconnaissance planes. Among them, Jagdstaffel 11, commanded by the young and methodical Oswald Boelcke until his death in late 1916, had set the standard for air combat doctrine, emphasizing formation discipline, mutual support, and tactical aggression. Manfred von Richthofen joined Jasta 11 in January 1917, having already proven himself in earlier reconnaissance and combat assignments. His rise coincided with the Luftstreitkräfte's broader effort to consolidate air superiority over the Western Front. The squadron typically operated a mix of aircraft, initially the Albatros D-3 fighters, which combined speed, maneuverability, and firepower, and later transitioned to the lighter, highly maneuverable Fokker Doctor I triplanes. Each pilot was expected to maintain meticulous familiarity with their machine, understanding its limits in climb rate, roll speed, and engine reliability, crucial knowledge when engaging multiple enemy aircraft or dodging anti-aircraft fire below. Ground crews worked in near-constant shifts, repairing engines, replacing worn machine gun barrels, and recalibrating instruments, all while under the occasional threat of artillery bursts that shook the airfield. Strategically, the German command recognized that air superiority was not merely symbolic. Intelligence gathered from reconnaissance flights informed artillery barrages and troop movements, while the destruction of enemy aircraft hampered Allied observation. Pilots like Richthofen operated in a theater where every sortie had operational significance. The weather, often overcast with sudden fog or low-hanging clouds, could conceal movements or conceal dangers, demanding constant vigilance. A patrol over no man's land was a precise combination of skill, timing, and risk assessment. The Allies, for their part, were intensifying efforts to contest the skies. British Royal Flying Corps squadrons, French escadrilles, and increasingly American Expeditionary Force units employed aircraft such as the SPAD-13, Newport 17, and Sopwith Camel. These planes were fast, maneuverable, and often flown by well-trained pilots with growing experience in aerial tactics. Dogfights became frequent and lethal. The psychological stress on pilots was immense. The roar of engines, the staccato of machine gun fire, the sudden appearance of enemy aircraft from sunlit clouds, all contributed to a relentless, high-stakes environment. Casualty rates were high. A pilot downed over enemy lines risked capture, while those shot over their own trenches faced the possibility of burning wreckage and death. In this climate, Richthoven's approach was methodical. He studied enemy tactics, learning patterns and weaknesses. His early combat reports described careful positioning, patience, and timing attacks to maximize advantage. Observation balloons, tethered like stationary sentinels behind Allied lines, were key intelligence nodes but heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns and patrolling fighters. Attacking these balloons required precision and nerves of steel. Richthoven developed a reputation not only for accuracy in shooting, but for minimizing exposure to return fire, a skill that would define his tactical philosophy. Training was rigorous. New pilots endured hours in dual-control trainers or under the mentorship of seasoned aces. Emphasis was placed on formation flying, understanding wind currents at altitude, and maintaining situational awareness in chaotic engagements. Each sortie was meticulously logged: aircraft number, engine performance, ammunition expenditure, altitude reached, and enemy aircraft engaged. Squadrons operated under a clear chain of command, with unit leaders coordinating patrols, assigning targets, and analyzing after-action reports. Communication relied on visual signals, rudimentary radios, or ground-based observers, requiring coordination under pressure. By early 1917, the air war had become a contest of skill, technology, and innovation. German tactics emphasized massed formations, coordinated attacks, and the integration of fighter and reconnaissance roles. Aircraft design was rapidly evolving. Stronger engines, synchronized machine guns, and improved aerodynamics gave pilots new opportunities and challenges. The Fokker Dr. I, introduced to Jasta 11 in late 1917, offered unprecedented maneuverability, though it lacked the speed of Allied Spads and Sopwiths. Mastery of this aircraft allowed Richthoven to exploit tight turns and climbing attacks, striking with lethal precision before enemies could react. Morale among pilots was a fragile but critical factor. Victory in the air brought recognition, medals, and a psychological edge. Losses were devastating, not only for their operational impact, but for the squadron's cohesion. Richthoven's leadership, both through example and disciplined approach, instilled a mixture of respect and efficiency in Jasta 11. His presence signaled competence, calm under pressure, and the deadly potential that earned him the moniker the Red Baron. Above the trenches, amid the smoke, wind, and roar of engines, the stage was set. Each mission carried strategic weight, personal risk, and the promise of aerial confrontation. In the skies of 1917 France, Richthoven's rise was intertwined with the evolution of air warfare itself, a fusion of technology, tactics, and human precision that would redefine combat above the battlefield. The evolution of air combat by 1917 had transformed reconnaissance from a passive, observational role into an active component of strategy. Observation balloons, tethered above enemy lines, transmitted invaluable intelligence on troop movements, artillery positions, and fortifications. Balloon observers communicated via semaphore or telephone lines to artillery units, enabling real-time adjustments to barrages. These balloons were heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns, or flak, and often patrolled by enemy fighters. Attacks on balloons demanded careful planning. A single miscalculation could end in destruction for both aircraft and pilot. Richthofen understood these risks and approached balloon engagements with a blend of caution and audacity, using altitude, cloud cover, and sun positioning to his advantage. German squadrons faced not only enemy fighters, but the constant challenge of logistical constraints. Aircraft engines were temperamental, prone to overheating or failure under sustained maneuvering. Fuel shortages occasionally limited sortie durations. Ground crews working in muddy, shell-pocked airfields maintained fragile aircraft under relentless operational tempo. Despite these difficulties, the Luftstreitkräfte emphasized meticulous record-keeping and maintenance protocols, ensuring that pilots could rely on the precision of their machines. Richthofen's attention to detail extended beyond flying. He studied aircraft mechanics, ammunition capacity, and engine performance to anticipate potential failures mid-flight. By mid-1917, aerial tactics had matured into complex strategies. Formation flying became standard. VIC formations allowed mutual protection and coordinated attacks, while patrol leaders directed engagements to maximize advantage. Pilots learned to exploit height, velocity, and position. Diving from above provided kinetic energy and improved firing accuracy, while turning engagements required intimate knowledge of one's aircraft capabilities relative to the enemy's. Richthofen's skill in exploiting these factors contributed directly to his increasing tally of victories. Richthofen's personal rise coincided with a period of intense aerial competition. The British Royal Flying Corps and the French Aéronautique Militaire refined interception tactics, while the introduction of faster, more agile aircraft forced German pilots to innovate continuously. Encounters with SPAD-30s or Sopwith Camels required split-second decision-making. A misjudged climb, turn, or engagement angle could prove fatal. Combat reports from this period emphasize the importance of situational awareness, reading enemy intentions, and anticipating maneuvers before they occurred. Richthofen demonstrated a unique combination of analytical skill and instinct, enabling him to exploit weaknesses while minimizing exposure. Training for new recruits emphasized realism. Flight hours included simulated dogfights, engine failure drills, and reconnaissance exercises under varying weather conditions. Night flying, though limited, tested navigation and coordination skills. Pilots were taught to maintain focus under extreme stress, a critical factor given the high casualty rates of the era. Psychological resilience was as valued as technical ability. Richthofen's careful, disciplined approach became a model within Jasta 11, reinforcing squadron cohesion and combat effectiveness. The organizational structure of German air units reflected both tactical sophistication and operational pragmatism. Jagdstaffeln typically consisted of 12 to 16 aircraft, divided into flights led by experienced officers. Missions were coordinated with ground reconnaissance and artillery operations, often timed to coincide with offensives or defensive countermeasures. Reports, maps, and intelligence gathered in one sortie informed decisions for subsequent missions. Richthofen participated actively in these briefings, studying aerial photographs, enemy positions, and patrol reports to refine his tactics. His emphasis on planning and preparation complemented his natural flying ability, creating a synergy that made him one of the most formidable aces of the war. Anti-aircraft artillery posed an ever-present threat. German and Allied forces both deployed ground-based weapons calibrated to detonate at specific altitudes. Balloon observers often marked positions with flares or visual signals, increasing the danger for attacking aircraft. Richthofen's engagements were calculated to exploit gaps in these defenses, often diving from high altitude to strike with minimal exposure. Precision, timing, and patience became hallmarks of his methodology. By late 1917, Richthofen's reputation had grown beyond Jasta 11. His victories, achieved through tactical mastery and disciplined execution, became a symbol of German air prowess. Operational intelligence credited him not only with downed enemy aircraft, but with strategic contributions, clearing airspace for reconnaissance planes, disrupting artillery observation, and shaping battlefield outcomes from above. His methods reflected an understanding that aerial combat was not an isolated endeavor, but an integral part of a larger military framework. Weather remained a constant variable. Low clouds, fog, and wind shear affected visibility, aircraft performance, and engagement strategy. Pilots adapted by developing techniques to exploit the terrain and atmospheric conditions. Richthofen's keen observation allowed him to anticipate these environmental factors using rising thermals, sun angles, and cloud cover to gain tactical advantage over both reconnaissance planes and fighter formations. The stage for 1918 was thus set. Richthofen, shaped by disciplined training, operational rigor, and tactical intelligence, faced an increasingly capable Allied Air Force. Every mission, patrol, and engagement was a calculated balance of risk and opportunity. In the skies above the Western Front, his rise was emblematic of the evolution of air warfare itself. Precision, innovation, and strategy fused with human skill to redefine the battlefield. The human experience in the cockpit of a First World War fighter was an unforgiving blend of exhilaration, peril, and relentless precision. For Manfred von Richthofen, every patrol was a study in calculated risk. The Fokker Dr. Sanarsud triplane, his aircraft of choice by late 1917, offered exceptional maneuverability, its triple wings allowing tight turns that could outmatch many Allied fighters. Yet the aircraft was slower than contemporary SPA-D-12s and Sopwith Camels, and its engine was temperamental under prolonged strain. Every flight demanded full awareness, altitude, airspeed, wind currents, and proximity to both allies and adversaries. One misjudged turn could result in a fatal stall. One moment of hesitation in a dogfight could be the difference between life and death. Cockpit visibility was limited. Pilots relied on instinct, spatial memory, and rapid visual scanning to track multiple targets simultaneously. Enemy aircraft could appear suddenly, emerging from cloud cover or sun glare. The roar of the rotary engine created a constant acoustic barrage, masking subtle sounds of approaching planes or distant anti-aircraft fire. Pilots depended on tactile feedback through control sticks and rudder pedals, interpreting vibrations, resistance, and aircraft behavior to maintain control. Richthofen's meticulous approach extended to these physical sensations, allowing him to predict the movements of both his aircraft and his opponents. Dogfights were exercises in physics and psychology. Pilots exploited altitude, energy, and maneuverability, using diving attacks to gain speed and climbing turns to escape or reposition. Richthofen favored a methodical style. He would observe enemy formations, identify vulnerabilities, and strike decisively. Attacking from above gave both tactical advantage and visual superiority. Cloud cover provided concealment, but introduced its own hazards, from spatial disorientation to sudden encounters with unseen enemy aircraft. Observing the sky for telltale movement in the clouds became as critical as monitoring his own instruments. The sensory environment of aerial combat was extreme. Engines shrieked, machine guns rattled, and bullets tore through fabric and wood. The smell of fuel, oil, and gunpowder mixed with cold air at altitude. Vibrations from airframe stress reverberated through the pilot's body, signaling potential structural limits. Each engagement required rapid decision-making under duress. Richthofen's reputation for calm in these conditions was grounded in disciplined training, accumulated experience, and a detailed understanding of enemy tactics. His situational awareness enabled him to react to threats with precision, often turning imminent danger into opportunity. Aircraft technology itself shaped combat style. The Fokker Dr. E's short wingspan allowed rapid roll and tight turns, ideal for dogfighting. It carried two synchronized 7.92 mm LMG 08/15 Spandau machine guns, firing through the propeller arc without striking the blades. Ammunition was limited. Conservation and accuracy were paramount. Richthofen developed a systematic approach. He would close to optimal firing range, adjust for relative speed and trajectory, and fire controlled bursts. Misjudged distance or overextended bursts risked emptying ammunition prematurely or exposing the aircraft to counterfire. Enemy technology forced continuous adaptation. The SP-AD-13, with superior speed and diving ability, challenged German pilots to exploit maneuverability rather than raw velocity. Sopwith Camels with highly responsive controls could turn rapidly and surprise opponents. Reconnaissance aircraft such as the Breguet 14 and RE-8 were slower, but often escorted by fighters, creating layered defenses. Richthofen assessed each opponent and selected tactics accordingly, blending aggressive offense with calculated restraint. Formation flying magnified both opportunity and danger. Jasta 11 operated in cohesive groups, often in Vic formations of 3 aircraft. Pilots provided mutual support, covering blind spots and coordinating attacks. Effective communication relied on hand signals, engine noise modulation, and pre-briefed tactics. Richthofen excelled at leading formations, positioning himself to strike effectively while shielding less experienced pilots. This approach minimized losses and maximized offensive potential, reinforcing both squadron morale and operational effectiveness. The psychological dimension of aerial combat was profound. Pilots faced constant exposure to death, witnessing comrades shot down or crashing into enemy lines. Stress, fatigue, and fear were ever present, tempered only by discipline, training, and camaraderie. Richthofen's measured demeanor, never rash, always analytical, set a standard for behavior under pressure. He recognized that morale influenced both individual performance and the cohesion of the squadron, and he cultivated a culture of professionalism, skill, and mutual responsibility. Observation balloons, integral to battlefield intelligence, presented a separate tactical challenge. Stationary but heavily defended, These balloons required precise attack methods. Pilots had to approach from angles that minimized exposure to anti-aircraft fire while accounting for defensive fighters. Richthofen developed techniques to climb above the balloon, dive rapidly, fire incendiary rounds, and escape under cloud cover. These operations demanded mastery of altitude speed and timing, further demonstrating the integration of technical skill and tactical acumen. The command perspective added layers of complexity. Leaders needed to coordinate patrols, assign sectors, and interpret intelligence from multiple sources. Richthofen actively engaged in mission planning, analyzing enemy patterns, and adjusting strategies for both individual and squadron-level success. His leadership style emphasized preparation, observation, and decisive action. Pilots were expected to understand both their personal role and the broader tactical context, aligning their decisions with strategic objectives while maintaining situational awareness. Enemy countermeasures evolved alongside German tactics. Allied squadrons employed high-altitude reconnaissance, layered fighter escorts, and coordinated formations designed to exploit weaknesses. Anti-aircraft artillery became more accurate, with triangulated firing and predictive targeting. Richthofen adapted by refining engagement timing, exploiting environmental factors, and leveraging the superior maneuverability of his aircraft. The interplay between technological capability and tactical innovation defined his combat approach, allowing him to maintain dominance even as opponents improved. Ultimately, Richthofen's angle on aerial warfare combined physical mastery, technical knowledge, tactical intelligence, and psychological resilience. Each sortie was a calculated exercise, balancing risk and reward, aggression and restraint. The integration of aircraft performance, formation strategy, and enemy analysis created a system in which skill, preparation, and discipline converged. The human, mechanical, and environmental factors coalesced in a dynamic theater where victory depended on precision, timing, and foresight. As Jasta 11 conducted patrols over the Western Front, these perspectives merged into operational effectiveness. Pilots internalized both individual responsibility and collective strategy. Richthofen's command presence, methodical skill, and understanding of aerial physics elevated the unit's performance. Every climb into the gray skies represented the intersection of human endurance, technological innovation, and strategic calculation. The cockpit became both instrument and laboratory, where theories of air combat were tested in real time, producing results measured in aircraft downed, territory observed, and lives risked. Leadership in the skies of the Western Front demanded precision, authority, and strategic foresight. Manfred von Richthofen's role as the leader of Jasta 11 extended beyond his personal victories. He was responsible for coordinating patrols, assigning sectors of engagement, and ensuring that each pilot understood both the immediate tactical objective and the broader strategic context. Orders were precise yet flexible, allowing pilots to respond to rapidly changing conditions while maintaining formation integrity. Richthofen's command emphasized calculated aggression. Attacks were executed with intent, minimizing unnecessary exposure while maximizing impact on enemy forces. His analytical approach was rooted in observation, experience, and a detailed understanding of both German and Allied capabilities. Enemy strategy influenced Richthofen's operational decisions. Allied pilots increasingly adopted coordinated patrols, layered formations, and high-speed interception tactics. Reconnaissance aircraft flew in tightly escorted groups, making opportunistic attacks more challenging. Anti-aircraft defenses evolved, with gunners employing triangulation and predictive aiming to counter both fighters and balloon attacks. Richthofen adapted by exploiting environmental conditions, sun glare, cloud cover, and wind currents, allowing him to approach targets from angles that minimized exposure while optimizing offensive effectiveness. Aircraft performance remained central to tactical decisions. The Fokker WW1, though slower in level flight, offered exceptional climb rate and tight turning capability. Richthofen leveraged these characteristics in dogfights, often using vertical maneuvers to gain positional advantage. His ability to read the performance limits of both his aircraft and enemy planes allowed him to dictate the terms of engagement. Situational awareness extended to anticipating enemy maneuvers, identifying escape routes, and calculating the risk of overextension. The psychological dimension of command was as significant as technical mastery. Pilots faced constant exposure to danger, with high casualty rates shaping morale and performance. Richthofen's calm demeanor under fire, disciplined approach to combat, and insistence on training and preparation fostered confidence within the squadron. Mutual support was emphasized. Pilots were expected to cover one another's blind spots and coordinate attacks, creating a cohesive fighting unit. His leadership reinforced the principle that individual skill alone was insufficient without discipline, coordination, and adherence to strategic objectives. Ethical considerations, though often implicit, shaped decisions in air combat. Engagement over enemy lines involved targeting both fighters and reconnaissance assets, sometimes placing pilots in positions where civilian areas were nearby. Richthofen maintained focus on operational objectives, prioritizing military targets and minimizing unnecessary risk to civilians while maximizing mission effectiveness. His adherence to discipline and the chain of command reflected an understanding of responsibility not only to his squadron, but to the broader conduct of war. Tactical innovation was continuous. Richthofen and Jasta 11 experimented with altitude management, diving attacks, and coordinated multi-aircraft strikes. Climbing attacks from higher altitude provided kinetic energy for speed and accuracy, while banking and rolling maneuvers enabled pilots to evade enemy fire or reposition advantageously. Each engagement was analyzed post-sortie, with victories and failures documented to refine future tactics. This feedback loop created a dynamic environment where experience rapidly translated into improved operational effectiveness. The interplay of human skill, aircraft technology, and environmental conditions defined each encounter. Altitude, wind, cloud cover, and sun position became tools as much as hazards. Richthofen's understanding of these factors allowed him to exploit the sky itself as a tactical instrument. Knowledge of how his triplane responded to wind gusts, how engine performance varied with altitude, and how enemy aircraft maneuvered under pressure enabled him to make split-second decisions with lethal efficiency. Enemy countermeasures continuously challenged German tactics. Allied formations sought to trap or outflank German pilots, employing feints, altitude advantage, and coordinated attacks. Richthofen responded by emphasizing flexibility within formation discipline, ensuring that pilots could adapt to unexpected threats without breaking cohesion. The ability to predict enemy actions and preemptively adjust positioning was a hallmark of his command style, allowing Jasta 11 to maintain a consistent advantage despite increasing opposition skill. Communication, limited to visual signals and pre-briefed plans, required clarity and precision. Pilots interpreted wing movements, engine modulation, and hand signals to execute complex maneuvers. Richthoven's emphasis on standard operating procedures reduced confusion, allowing multiple aircraft to operate in concert during high-speed engagements. These systems reflected the integration of human capability, mechanical performance, and operational planning, components critical to sustained aerial effectiveness. Technological evolution continued to influence strategy. Enemy aircraft designs demanded rapid adaptation. Heavier Allied fighters threatened slower German models in sustained level flight, while agile scouts could exploit tight turns. Richthoven's methods prioritized engagement conditions that leveraged his aircraft's strengths while avoiding unfavorable situations. His strategic patience, waiting for the optimal moment to strike, contrasted with reckless aggression, reducing casualties while maximizing impact. The human cost of command was ever present. Every sortie carried potential loss, and the death of a squadron member affected operational capacity and morale. Richthoven's approach mitigated risk without sacrificing offensive capability. By combining training, discipline, and situational awareness, he minimized unnecessary exposure while maintaining pressure on enemy forces. The psychological resilience of both leader and pilots was tested daily, underscoring the human dimension of warfare at altitude. Through leadership, tactical insight, and technical mastery, Richthoven exemplified the integration of multiple perspectives in aerial combat. He balanced personal skill with command responsibility, adapting to enemy strategies while exploiting environmental and technological factors. Each sortie represented a synthesis of preparation, execution, and analysis, forming a cycle of continuous operational improvement. By mid-1918, the cumulative effect of these perspectives had elevated Richthoven and Jasta 11 to unmatched effectiveness. Their dominance was not accidental, but the product of deliberate strategy, disciplined execution, and meticulous understanding of both human and mechanical variables. The Red Baron's approach demonstrated that success in the skies required more than individual skill. It demanded the harmonization of leadership, technology, tactics, and human endurance. As the Western Front endured in its attritional grind, the lessons drawn from these experiences would inform future air strategy. Richthoven's methods, balancing offensive aggression with strategic restraint, became a template for operational excellence. In this theater, every flight was a calculated endeavor, where the interplay of human cognition, machine capability, and environmental factors determined both survival and victory. April 21, 1918. The skies above the Somme near the village of Morlancourt are a canvas of shifting gray. Low clouds hang in fragmented sheets, allowing patches of sunlight to scatter across the scarred terrain below. Trenches wind like scarred ribbons across the landscape, artillery smoke curling into the air, mingling with mist and dust. Jagdstaffel 11 prepares for a scheduled patrol. Its objective: intercept an incoming formation of British reconnaissance and fighter aircraft reported along the front. Richthoven, now in his crimson Fokker Dr. Sur, briefs his pilots in concise, practiced terms, emphasizing altitude advantage, formation discipline, and target prioritization. At 09:17 hours, the patrol lifts off. Engines roar, propellers churn, and the triplanes ascend into the cold morning air. Richthofen positions himself at the head of the formation, his eyes scanning for movement along the horizon. The initial climb is measured, maximizing potential energy for tactical flexibility. Visibility is limited. Scattered clouds offer both concealment and hazard. Every pilot is aware that a single misjudged maneuver can result in a fatal collision or exposure to enemy fire. By 9:35, the enemy appears. A mixed formation of SPAD-30s, Bristol fighters, and slower Breguet 14 reconnaissance planes. The British flight is spread thin, attempting to shield vulnerable observation aircraft with agile escorts. Richthofen assesses the formation, noting altitude, relative speed, and orientation of the enemy. He signals a climb to 200 meters above the British flight, intending to dive on the rear of the formation, his preferred tactic for achieving both surprise and kinetic advantage. The first engagement begins at 9:42. Richthofen dives from above, the triplane's wings vibrating under acceleration. He closes to optimal firing range, approximately 75 meters, targeting the rear SPAD-13th. Controlled bursts from his twin Spandau machine guns tear through the enemy aircraft, severing its tail structure. The SPAD spirals downward, a brief plume of smoke marking its descent before disappearing into the clouds. Simultaneously, other Jasta 11 pilots engage secondary targets, executing synchronized attacks that force the British formation into evasive maneuvers. Anti-aircraft fire from below intensifies. Flak bursts scatter around the triplanes, some detonating dangerously close, forcing pilots to adjust altitude and heading while maintaining formation. The clouds, previously a protective screen, now become obstacles. Sudden appearances of aircraft in sunlit gaps require instantaneous judgment. Richthofen demonstrates precision under pressure, weaving between bursts, aligning his guns, and maintaining altitude advantage for repeated attacks. By 9:50, Richthofen has downed a second aircraft, a Bristol fighter attempting to cover a damaged Breguet 14. His attacks are systematic, climbing to energy height, diving at calculated angles, and firing controlled bursts. Each maneuver exploits the Fokker WW1's strengths, tight turning radius, and superior climb rate, while compensating for its slower level flight speed. British pilots attempt to regroup, but Jasta 11's cohesion and tactical discipline prevent effective counteraction. At 9:57, the engagement escalates. Enemy fighters break formation, attempting to flank Jasta 11 from below. Richthofen signals a reorientation of the squadron, pivoting on the wingman's position and maintaining mutual cover. The airspace becomes chaotic. Aircraft spiral, climb, and dive, leaving vapor trails and smoke streaks across the gray sky. The mechanical stress on the Fokker Doctor is palpable. Control surfaces strain under rapid maneuvers, and engine temperature fluctuates as altitude changes rapidly. Richthofen's situational awareness allows him to remain at the center of the engagement, exploiting openings and minimizing exposure. The next 15 minutes become a calculated ballet of attack and evasion. Richthofen alternates between offensive dives and defensive climbs, ensuring that energy advantage is never surrendered. Enemy aircraft are forced into reactive patterns, unable to consolidate into effective counterattacks. One SPAD-13 attempts a head-on engagement. Richthofen rolls the triplane, evading fire, and positions above the adversary to deliver a disabling burst. The SPAD enters a flat spin, descending toward Allied lines, leaving Richthofen momentarily above the formation. Throughout the battle, communication within WW1 is visual and instinctual. Wingmen mirror maneuvers, covering blind spots and assisting in targeting enemy aircraft. The coordinated attacks amplify their effectiveness, allowing the squadron to inflict disproportionate losses on the opposing flight. Richthofen's leadership is evident. Decisions are deliberate. His observation of enemy movements precise, and his tactical acumen ensures both offensive success and squadron survival. By 10:12, after 25 minutes of intense engagement, the enemy formation breaks completely. Reconnaissance planes attempt escape at low altitude, pursued briefly by WW1 fighters, but flak and terrain hazards prevent a full descent. The aerial engagement ends with 4 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed, 2 damaged, and no losses for WW1, a rare outcome in the relentless attrition of 1918 air combat. Richthofen's personal tally for the sortie reaches a notable figure: 3 confirmed kills in a single engagement. The combination of technical skill, tactical insight, and leadership under pressure reinforces his growing reputation. Squadron reports detail precise movements, altitudes, engagement timings, and enemy types, highlighting both operational success and the evolving methodology of air warfare. Intelligence gathered from the encounter informs artillery targeting and battlefield decision-making, demonstrating the broader strategic impact of aerial dominance. As the patrol returns to Morlancourt Airfield, the landscape remains scarred by artillery, observation balloons, and abandoned positions. Pilots reflect on the physical and psychological intensity of the engagement: engine heat, vibrations, wind chill, and constant alertness for threats. Richthofen debriefs with meticulous attention, analyzing enemy behavior, weapon effectiveness, and formation performance. Lessons learned during this patrol inform subsequent operations, shaping both individual pilot strategy and squadron doctrine. This engagement marks a turning point, not only in operational success, but in the broader air campaign. Richthofen's ability to combine technological mastery, tactical innovation, and leadership precision exemplifies the integration of human skill and mechanical capability in achieving aerial superiority. The battle demonstrates how preparation, discipline, and situational awareness could decisively influence the outcome of engagements, and how a single methodical leader could elevate the performance of an entire squadron. As the sun climbs higher, illuminating the war-torn fields below, the skies momentarily calm, but the specter of further combat looms. The Western Front remains a theater of attrition, and the lessons of this engagement will echo in subsequent sorties. For Richthofen, the tactical mastery displayed in these 25 minutes becomes both a personal benchmark and a testament to the evolving science of air warfare, where leadership, precision, and calculated aggression define the boundary between survival and destruction. May 21, 1918. The morning air over the Somme is crisp, tinged with the metallic scent of artillery smoke lingering from previous days' bombardments. Clouds hang low, fractured, creating shifting patches of sunlight and shadow across the trenches and shell-pocked fields. Jagdstaffel 11 is preparing for a high-risk patrol aimed at intercepting an incoming flight of Allied reconnaissance aircraft reported over the Bray-sur-Somme sector. Manfred von Richthofen, now Germany's most experienced ace, readies his crimson Fokker DRI, its wings streaked with the marks of prior sorties, engine humming steadily in the chill air. At 08:47 hours, the squadron lifts off. Triplanes climb into the fragmented morning light, propellers slicing the cold air. Richthofen maintains a high position, scanning the horizon for the approaching Allied formation. Reports indicate a mixed flight. Sopwith Camels providing escort for slower DH-4 reconnaissance planes. Richthofen calculates the intercept point, noting wind direction, sun angle, and cloud cover, positioning his formation for maximum tactical advantage. Every second is crucial. Timing and altitude determine whether the attack will succeed or result in losses. By 9:05, the enemy is sighted, a flight of 6 Sopwith Camels protecting 2 reconnaissance DH-4s. Richthofen signals a tactical climb to energy altitude, intending to dive on the rear of the formation. Wingmen adjust positions, forming a coordinated VIC formation, maintaining visual contact and mutual support. The first contact occurs at 9:12. Richthofen dives with precision, closing to effective range of 70 meters, and fires controlled bursts from his twin Spandau machine guns. The rear camel is struck, its fuselage trailing smoke before it descends behind enemy lines. The engagement escalates immediately. Allied pilots respond with evasive maneuvers, attempting to regroup and protect the reconnaissance aircraft. Flak from below intensifies, the bursts exploding dangerously close to German fighters. Richthofen executes a rapid climb, using cloud cover to evade incoming fire while assessing the positions of both allies and enemies. The Fokker Doctor's maneuverability allows tight turns and sudden altitude changes, giving him an advantage over the heavier camels. At 9:18, a second camel attempts a head-on engagement. Richthofen anticipates the approach, rolls the triplane to avoid the frontal attack, and repositions above the adversary. A precise burst disables the camel's control surfaces, sending it spiraling downward. The DH-4S attempt low-altitude escape, but Jasta 11's coordinated attacks prevent their retreat. Each maneuver reflects meticulous calculation. Speed, altitude, angle of attack, and enemy behavior are assessed in seconds. Richthofen's skill ensures both effective offense and minimized exposure to counterfire. The squadron's cohesion is critical. Pilots maintain formation integrity while adapting to enemy actions. Wingmen cover blind spots, respond to unexpected threats, and mirror maneuvers, creating overlapping fields of attack and defense. Richthofen's leadership provides both strategic direction and moral assurance. His experience and calm under pressure inspire confidence, enabling the squadron to operate with efficiency despite chaos. The airspace becomes a three-dimensional chessboard, with altitude, position, and timing dictating outcomes. At 9:27, another Sopwith Camel attempts to engage Richthofen directly. A dive and tight turn allow the Red Baron to maintain energy advantage, positioning himself for a lethal attack from above. His Spandau bursts strike the enemy's engine, forcing the camel into an uncontrolled descent. The remaining DH-4 reconnaissance plane attempts evasive maneuvers, zigzagging at low altitude, but flak and winged interception prevent its escape. Within 20 minutes, 3 enemy aircraft are downed, 1 forced to retreat, and the Allied formation is effectively neutralized. Mechanical stress on the triplanes is significant. Engines run hot, control surfaces vibrate, and structural strain is constant under repeated dives and tight maneuvers. Richthofen monitors each movement, adjusting throttle and trim to maintain performance. Ammunition conservation is critical. Bursts are calculated, maximizing effect, while minimizing waste. His tactical approach integrates mechanical knowledge, spatial awareness, and combat judgment, a combination refined through hundreds of sorties. At 9:41, the turning point occurs. Richthofen identifies a vulnerable segment of the enemy formation attempting a coordinated retreat. With altitude advantage and clear line of sight, he signals a focused dive. Wingmen follow, concentrating fire on the lead DH-4. Controlled bursts disable its tail section, sending the aircraft into a spin toward the Allied trenches. Another Camel attempts interception, but coordinated attacks from Jasta 11 wingmen neutralize the threat. Within minutes, the enemy flight is scattered, destroyed, or forced into retreat. This decisive action illustrates the integration of human skill, technology, and tactical foresight. Richthofen's mastery of aircraft performance, enemy behavior, and squadron coordination allows a small unit to achieve disproportionate effect. Operationally, the engagement secures German air superiority in the sector for the day, protecting reconnaissance and artillery operations, and denying the Allies valuable intelligence. Reports confirm 3 destroyed enemy aircraft, 1 damaged, and no losses among Jasta 11, a rare achievement in the attritional air war. Throughout the engagement, environmental conditions remain a constant factor. Cloud cover provides concealment and ambush opportunities, but also reduces visibility and increases collision risk. Sun glare is exploited to mask attack vectors, while wind currents are used to maintain energy advantage during climbs and dives. Richthofen's ability to integrate environmental awareness with tactical execution exemplifies the advanced air combat strategy emerging in 1918. The psychological impact is profound. Allied pilots witness the devastating efficiency of Jasta 11 and the Red Baron's precise attacks. For German pilots, success reinforces confidence and operational cohesion. The engagement demonstrates the interplay between technical mastery, leadership, and morale, revealing how a single ace could influence both tactical outcomes and the broader air campaign. By 1000 hours, the patrol returns to Morlancourt. Engines wind down, wheels touch the mud-pocked airfield, and pilots dismount with awareness of the day's intensity. Debriefings are conducted with meticulous detail. Engagement times, aircraft destroyed, maneuvers executed, and environmental conditions noted. Richthofen's analysis informs subsequent sorties, shaping both individual and squadron-level strategy. Lessons learned: timing, positioning, use of altitude, and coordinated attack will influence engagements for the remainder of the campaign. This patrol, with its decisive action and minimal losses, represents a culmination of skill, strategy, and leadership. The Red Baron's ability to integrate aircraft performance, enemy behavior, environmental factors, and squadron coordination demonstrates why he remained the most feared pilot of the Western Front. The engagement becomes a case study in operational efficiency, tactical innovation, and the evolution of aerial combat. As clouds drift and the Somme fields below stretch into misted distance, the significance of the encounter resonates. Richthofen has not only achieved immediate tactical objectives, but has set a benchmark for aerial engagement, illustrating how preparation, observation, and precision execution can dominate even in complex, chaotic environments. This turning point underscores the emergence of air power as a decisive element in modern warfare, where the combination of human skill, mechanical performance, and strategic insight shapes both the battlefield and the course of the war. The immediate aftermath of the Somme engagements in April and May 1918 revealed the operational and psychological impact of Richthoven's patrols. Squadron reports from Jagdstaffel 11 document 3 to 4 enemy aircraft destroyed per engagement, with minimal to no losses on the German side. Artillery units on the ground noted the improved security for reconnaissance missions, as Allied observation aircraft were either destroyed or forced to retreat. The intelligence gathered during these patrols directly influenced German artillery targeting, troop movement decisions, and defensive positioning. For the first time in weeks, German ground forces operated under the relative advantage of air superiority in this sector. Pilots returning to Morlancourt described the high intensity of the engagements. The physical toll was considerable. Prolonged exposure to wind chill at altitudes exceeding 3,000 meters, combined with engine vibration, adrenaline, and mental strain, left even experienced pilots fatigued. Cockpit instruments recorded fluctuations in engine temperature, fuel consumption, and control responsiveness, and post-sortie maintenance teams noted structural wear on wings and fuselage. Despite the extreme operational tempo, Richthoven emphasized thorough debriefing and reflection, analyzing tactical successes and areas for improvement. Every sortie became a source of intelligence, informing both individual pilot development and squadron-wide strategic adaptation. The Allies, on the receiving end of these patrols, adjusted their operational posture. Reconnaissance missions were delayed or rerouted, while fighter escorts increased in number to counter the threat posed by Jasta 11. Reports from British and French squadrons expressed growing concern over the Red Baron's precision and methodical attacks. Tactical manuals circulated post-engagement emphasized the need for coordinated formation flying, altitude awareness, and mutual support in response to German aerial dominance. Psychological effects were equally significant. Pilots entering contested airspace faced heightened stress and anticipation, acutely aware of Richthoven's reputation for disciplined aggression. Material losses were notable. The destroyed aircraft included SPAD-12-3s, Sopwith Camels, and Breguet 14 reconnaissance planes. Each loss required replacement through production lines already strained by ongoing conflict. Spare parts, engines, and trained pilots were finite resources. German documentation highlighted the efficiency of Jasta 11 operations. With minimal losses, the squadron achieved strategic disruption of enemy reconnaissance and inflicted operational setbacks. This imbalance underscored the effectiveness of disciplined, tactical leadership in achieving disproportionate results on the battlefield. Operationally, the engagement reinforced doctrinal principles within the Luftstreitkräfte. The integration of reconnaissance, fighter patrols, and strategic targeting exemplified how air superiority could directly influence ground operations. The Red Baron's emphasis on altitude advantage, formation discipline, and tactical patience became case studies for other squadrons. Debriefings included detailed analysis of maneuvers, enemy reactions, and environmental factors, highlighting the importance of preparation and situational awareness in achieving operational objectives. Human consequences were significant. Casualties among Allied pilots were high in these encounters. Several were killed in mid-air collisions, crashes behind enemy lines, or through flak exposure. Those who survived experienced lasting psychological effects, reporting heightened vigilance, fear, and stress in subsequent sorties. German pilots, while spared casualties in these specific patrols, were acutely aware of the risks inherent in each engagement. Richthoven's leadership mitigated these risks through rigorous training, methodical planning, and continuous observation of enemy behavior. The balance of operational success and human cost shaped the perception of aerial combat as both a technological and psychological battlefield. Squadron morale was profoundly influenced by these outcomes. JASTA 11 pilots gained confidence in their tactics, equipment, and command. The Red Baron's presence reinforced discipline and cohesion, emphasizing that calculated, precise action could achieve success while preserving life and material. Celebrated victories were documented in both official reports and personal logs, establishing benchmarks for subsequent operations. Pilots internalized lessons on enemy behavior, altitude management, and tactical sequencing, further enhancing the squadron's effectiveness in future engagements. The strategic consequences extended beyond individual missions. Allied commanders faced challenges in adjusting reconnaissance and fighter operations to counter the German advantage. Air superiority allowed JASTA 11 and other German units to influence artillery effectiveness, monitor troop movements, and disrupt enemy communications. These factors had direct implications for broader operational planning. German High Command recognized the value of aces like Richthofen not only as individual combatants, but as force multipliers capable of shaping air campaign outcomes. The engagement also underscored the importance of technology and maintenance. Fokker WW1 triplanes, though limited in speed, provided decisive maneuverability in tactical dogfights. Continuous monitoring of engines, airframes, and ammunition stocks ensured readiness for subsequent missions. Ground crews played a critical role in sustaining operational capability, performing repairs under challenging conditions and ensuring that aircraft could meet the demands of prolonged engagements. This integration of human skill, mechanical reliability, and tactical planning became a hallmark of successful air operations. Reconnaissance intelligence confirmed the broader impact. Allied movements were delayed, observed troop concentrations were disrupted, and artillery fire coordination was compromised. The psychological presence of Richthofen in the skies affected both operational decisions and risk assessment for enemy commanders. Even brief encounters led to strategic adjustments, demonstrating that dominance in the air could have cascading effects on ground operations. By early June 1918, the cumulative effect of these patrols was evident. German air forces maintained localized control over key sectors, enabling more effective reconnaissance, protection of ground forces, and tactical disruption of Allied movements. Richthofen's leadership, technical mastery, and operational insight had transformed JASTA 11 into an elite unit capable of influencing the broader war effort. The engagement exemplified the integration of precision tactics, mechanical expertise, and strategic awareness, elements that defined successful aerial campaigns during the First World War. In the weeks following the Somme engagements, the strategic and operational consequences of Richthofen's patrols became increasingly apparent. The German High Command noted that JASTA 11's actions not only disrupted Allied reconnaissance, but also forced a reallocation of enemy resources. Fighter escorts increased in number and range. Reconnaissance missions were postponed or rerouted, and artillery adjustments were delayed due to a lack of accurate aerial intelligence. The Red Baron's patrols had achieved more than individual victories. They had created a temporary yet significant operational advantage across the sector, illustrating the growing importance of air dominance in modern warfare. Squadron cohesion and morale reached unprecedented levels. Pilots of JASTA-11 internalized the tactical principles demonstrated by Richthofen: patience, energy management, formation discipline, and the judicious use of altitude advantage. Training exercises increasingly mirrored real engagement scenarios, emphasizing rapid decision-making under stress, coordination between wingmen, and exploitation of aircraft strengths against enemy weaknesses. Each sortie became both a tactical operation and a practical classroom, reinforcing the integration of theory and execution. The Red Baron's influence was evident not only in results, but in the attitudes and capabilities of his pilots, who approached missions with confidence tempered by disciplined caution. Enemy responses highlighted the psychological impact of aerial dominance. British and French pilots reported heightened anxiety when encountering JASTA-11, particularly the Red Baron himself. Intelligence briefings circulated within Allied commands described Richthofen's methodical attacks, his tactical patience, and his ability to exploit environmental conditions. Pilots were warned to expect sudden dives from above, rapid positioning maneuvers, and coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The psychological effect of a single ace capable of altering the dynamics of the airspace was profound, influencing not only individual pilot behavior but also squadron-level operational planning. Casualty reports from these engagements confirmed both the effectiveness and the cost of air operations. Among Allied forces, multiple aircraft were destroyed or forced to retreat, and several pilots were killed in action or captured. These losses disrupted operational continuity, as replacement aircraft and trained personnel were limited. German pilots, under Richthofen's leadership, experienced minimal casualties due to disciplined tactics and careful attention to aircraft limitations. The disparity in losses reinforced the operational value of precision, preparation, and tactical innovation. Material considerations were equally significant. Each downed aircraft represented a depletion of Allied resources: planes, engines, weaponry, and trained pilots. Replacement cycles were slow, constrained by production capabilities and training requirements. For Germany, the ability to maintain operational readiness with minimal losses demonstrated the efficiency of JASTA-11's approach. Ground crews, logistics personnel, and maintenance teams ensured that aircraft remained functional despite the intensity of operations, highlighting the essential interplay between technical proficiency and combat effectiveness. Richthofen's actions also influenced tactical doctrine. The principle of energy management, using altitude and potential energy to dictate engagement, became a model for other squadrons. Controlled bursts of machine gun fire, coordinated team maneuvers, and careful observation of enemy behavior were codified into training protocols. The Red Baron's methodical approach emphasized that air combat was not purely about individual skill or aggression. It was a combination of preparation, environmental awareness, and disciplined execution. These doctrines would resonate throughout German aviation units and later influence aerial tactics beyond the First World War. Strategic implications extended to the coordination between air and ground forces. With Allied reconnaissance compromised, German artillery and infantry operations benefited from reduced observation and interference. Artillery barrages became more precise, informed by German-controlled reconnaissance flights, while troop movements faced less risk of being detected and countered. Richthofen's engagements thus had tangible effects on the broader battlefield, demonstrating the direct link between air superiority and operational success in combined arms warfare. The psychological toll on pilots was notable. Surviving intense dogfights required both physical endurance and mental resilience. Pilots reported elevated heart rates, heightened awareness, and sustained stress levels during engagements. The presence of a highly skilled adversary, such as Richthofen, magnified these effects. Conversely, German pilots operating under his leadership experienced increased confidence, trust in command, and an understanding of coordinated tactics. The contrast underscored the human dimension of air warfare. Leadership, training, and psychological preparedness were as critical as mechanical capability and firepower. Reconnaissance and intelligence outcomes reinforced the operational advantage gained through these engagements. Observation balloons, previously at risk of attack, were secured for extended periods, allowing for continuous monitoring of Allied movements. Tactical mapping, artillery adjustment, and battlefield coordination improved as a result of the temporary air superiority. The Red Baron's ability to neutralize or disrupt enemy aircraft allowed for greater freedom of operation, demonstrating how tactical mastery in the air could produce strategic effects on the ground. By June 1918, the cumulative effects of these engagements contributed to the perception of Richthofen as a symbol of German air dominance. His record of confirmed victories, disciplined leadership, and consistent operational success earned him both admiration within the Luftstreitkräfte and notoriety among Allied forces. The practical consequences, disrupted reconnaissance, lowered enemy morale, material attrition, and enhanced ground support, cemented his role as a pivotal figure in the air war over the Western Front. These patrols exemplify the integration of multiple dimensions of warfare: human skill, technological performance, strategic insight, and environmental awareness. Richthofen's influence extended beyond immediate combat outcomes to shape doctrine, morale, and operational effectiveness. The engagement illustrates the broader evolution of aerial warfare, a domain in which individual skill, squadron coordination, and tactical innovation collectively redefine the battlefield, producing effects that ripple through both air and ground operations. The legacy of Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, extends far beyond his 80 confirmed victories. His career embodies the transformation of aerial combat during the First World War, illustrating how skill, discipline, and tactical insight could elevate individual and squadron effectiveness to decisive levels. Richthofen demonstrated that air superiority was not merely the result of faster engines or heavier armament, but of precise observation, careful planning, and the harmonization of human, mechanical, and environmental factors. Every patrol, every engagement was an exercise in calculated decision-making, executed with an understanding of both immediate and strategic consequences. Richthofen's meticulous attention to aircraft performance, enemy behavior, and squadron coordination redefined what it meant to be an ace. His approach combined personal skill with leadership, emphasizing preparation, observation, and execution over impulsive aggression. This methodology allowed Jasta 11 to dominate the skies, protect reconnaissance operations, and influence ground battles. The tactical innovations he employed, energy management, formation discipline, altitude exploitation, and controlled engagement, became foundational principles for air combat doctrine, influencing future generations of aviators and the broader development of aerial warfare strategy. Beyond tactical mastery, Richthoven's career illustrates the human dimensions of air combat. Pilots faced extreme physical and psychological demands, exposure to high altitude, mechanical limitations, enemy fire, and the constant presence of mortality. Leadership, training, and psychological resilience were as crucial as flying skill. The Red Baron's calm under pressure, methodical decision-making, and attention to squadron cohesion mitigated these risks, demonstrating that human factors were integral to operational success. Historically, Richthoven's influence transcends individual engagement. He represents the evolution of air power as a strategic instrument capable of shaping battlefield outcomes. His successes underscore how a combination of preparation, tactical innovation, and leadership can produce disproportionate effects in warfare. The air campaigns of 1917 and 1918, particularly those over the Western Front, reflect a shift from reconnaissance-driven sorties to decisive, calculated engagements where skilled pilots could alter the operational environment. In the end, the story of the Red Baron is both a testament to human skill and a reflection on the broader implications of technological and tactical advancement in war. His life and career exemplify the integration of intellect, discipline, and courage in a rapidly evolving domain, leaving a legacy that continues to define the principles of aerial combat and the enduring role of air superiority in modern military strategy.